America's development. June 19th falls on a Saturday this year. The law went into effect immediately, making Friday the first holiday, leaving a bit of a scramble for employers. As a result, many workers will have to wait until next year to enjoy the day off. And sometimes this New York Stock Exchange is closed on federal holidays. It will be open today, but they're evaluating that for next year. Too quick, it happened too fast to be able to close markets for the day.
Yeah, even though it seemed to be heading that way, everyone seems surprised still. All right, speaking of resistance to change, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is vowing to block new voting legislation from moving forward. Now, that's despite a compromise offer from key Senate Democrat Joe Manchin that had included GOP proposals. Now, it's all but guaranteed Republicans will filibuster the sweeping voting rights bill Democrats plan to send to the floor next week. Ryan Nobles has the latest on all this.
Whoa. Significant reforms to America's voting laws have been a key priority for Democrats in this version of the U.S. Congress, and they do feel like they're making progress. The House has already passed a sweeping bill called the For the People Act, but it's run into roadblocks here in the United States Senate, not just with Republicans, but with a key Democrat, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Well, Manchin has now released his version of this bill that he thinks he can support, and it's been met with some optimism from Democrats. They don't like everything that Manchin has proposed, but the negotiations seem to be headed in the right direction. Still, there remains a significant obstacle, and that is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Listen to what he had to say about Manchin's proposed reforms to the bill.
I think all of you surely know how all Republicans feel about this proposal. It's a solution in search of a problem. There's now a debate among Democrats over a revised version. All Republicans, I think, will oppose that as well.
Now, McConnell's opposition is significant because in order to get anything through the Senate, it requires 10 Republican votes. And if McConnell says Republicans aren't going to support it, they likely will not. So that means in order for this bill to get through, Democrats would need to break up the filibuster for it. And that's something that Manchin has said he cannot do. So while Manchin believes that he can come around to supporting some form of voting reforms, unless he's willing to also break up the filibuster, this bill is not going anywhere. Now, Democrats remain hopeful that Manchin will come around. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said that she believes in Joe Manchin. There is certainly a lot of pressure being applied to Manchin to make that change and take that step. At this point, he says he is unwilling to do so, but we'll have to see what happens as Democrats continue to apply that pressure. The Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, says he will bring the bill to a floor, at least begin that process as soon as next week. Ryan Nobles, CNN on Capitol Hill.
All right, thanks, Ryan. All right, Bank of America is giving workers a Labor Day deadline to get back to the office.
The view is after Labor Day, our view is all the vaccinated teammates will be back and will be able to operate fairly normally, and we'll then start to make provisions for the other teammates as we move through the fall.
It's not just Bank of America. All the big Wall Street banks want workers back to the office. The Morgan Stanley CEO said he'd be disappointed if New Yorkers aren't back in the office in the fall.
If you can go to a restaurant in New York City, you can come into the office. And we want you in the office.
Goldman Sachs workers returned to the office this week. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said remote work doesn't work for those who want to, quote, hustle, and it hampers collaborative work. Experts cite a few reasons for this rush back to the office, like culture. Banking is a face-to-face business, and Zoom and Slack are no substitute for in-person bonding and training. Others worry about cybersecurity. Working remotely puts that at risk, especially when conducting billions of dollars in transactions. Well, we began this show talking about Europe opening for unvaccinated Americans, a new phase in the coronavirus pandemic, and these banks recognize that new phase. Time to go back to the
why
office.
wait until September? The rates of the virus are actually really low now, so why wait until September when it actually might resurge because of variants?
Schools, daycare, childcare, all of these reasons that have disrupted so many working families, they want to make sure the provisions for all their workers to be able to get back safely and for their families.
All right, it's election day in Iran. We'll tell you why turnout is expected to actually be so low for this controversial presidential election. We are live in Tehran. That's next.
To understand Italy, you need to look at the food. People here do things their own way.
This is a philosophy. This is our tradition. Beautiful.
Stanley Tucci searching for Italy. Sunday on CNN. تحياتنا للأصدقاء في النجوم يا ليت يجمعنا الزمان.
If we could introduce ourselves to an alien life form, what would we say?
Hello from the children of planet Earth. Здравствуйте, приветствую вас.
What you're doing is something very important. You are trying to make contact with another civilization.
Both voyages carry a copper phonograph record. A message celebrating the sights and sounds of Earth.
I was looking for images for 100 different topics. Agriculture, families, science, medicine. Sports was only one, that if you were to choose one sporting event that was global and perhaps most representative of humanity, it would be the Olympics. And if you were to choose one athletic that was basic to all sports, probably running.
And what if the athletes chosen to represent humanity were never told, and they didn't learn the truth until decades later? This will outlive our planet. I just wonder how you feel about that.
Wow.
It's just not something that you can't wrap your mind around. But your heart can and your imagination can.
On the next Living Golf, looking forward to the return of golf's oldest major, Britain's Open Championship. Let's swing over to England's iconic Golf Coast and hear from former world #1, Ernie Els.
It's hard for me to explain. You actually have to go out there and actually experience it yourself. Join me, Shane O'Donoghue, on this month's Living Golf.
Saturday on CNN in association with Golf Saudi. Transformation, technology, new Marketplace Europe.
This month, the luxury industry redefined by technology and sustainability.
Marketplace Europe, Saturday on CNN.
Fresh off the Geneva summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin is now lavishing praise on President Biden, calling him a professional who is completely knowledgeable on all issues. The Kremlin's state media has portrayed Biden as weak, not up to the job, and even as someone who might not last through his presidency. Putin now says, never mind.
This image of President Biden, which is pictured by Russian and US media, does not correspond to reality. This image of him can feel discouraging, but there is no need to be discouraged because President Biden is a professional. And you should be very precise while working with him to not miss anything. He doesn't miss a thing. I repeat once again, he is focused. He understands what he wants to achieve and reaches it very skillfully. You can easily feel it.
Interesting comments there. Well, during their 3-hour meeting, President Biden pressed Putin on a host of issues, including cyber attacks targeting U.S. companies and infrastructure that have been attributed to Russia-based criminals.
Iranians are heading to the polls today in a presidential election that is all but decided. The practically uncontested frontrunner is Judicial Chief Ibrahim Raisi, a close associate of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. He became the frontrunner after most of the other serious contenders were barred from the race. Frederick Peiken is in Tehran. So glad to have you there. We know that you have such expertise in the region. We understand Iran's electronic ballot machines are malfunctioning, and that's creating some sort of a delay in voting. Tell us what's happening there, Fred.
Yeah, it certainly, Christina, it certainly has created some issues early on in the voting. Apparently, some people also went home after they waited for a very long time in line for those electronic ballot machines. Those are only in some places, though, and the authorities say they're trying to get that under control. As you can see here, we're in one of the main polling stations in Tehran, and there's quite a few people who are actually coming here to vote. One of the big issues, or the big question about this election really is how many people are actually going to turn out. There was some fear on the part of the authorities that people might stay home, that voter turnout could be very low. In fact, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he voted very early today, and he urged people to go to the polls because he said that not voting would strengthen, as he called it, the enemy, which obviously referring to the United States. The main issue on the minds of most voters that we've been speaking to, we've been to several polling stations here in the city, it's been Iran's economy, obviously still suffering under those crippling sanctions put in place by the Trump administration. Then, of course, trying to get the nuclear agreement back on track. And that candidate you were talking about, who's obviously very much the front runner right now, Ibrahim Raisi, he has said, despite being very, very conservative, he has said he wants to remain in the nuclear agreement and wants the U.S. to come back in, but simply because that's what the supreme leader has decided he wants as well, guys.
All right, Fred Forrest in Tehran at that voting place. Thanks so much, Fred. Talk soon.
All right, tensions on the rise once again in Gaza. Israeli Defense Forces striking Hamas military targets overnight. It's the second time this week. Hadas Gold is monitoring all the latest developments for us live from Jerusalem. Hadas, what started this latest round of violence, and what happened to the ceasefire?
Well, Laura, for the second time in 3 days, Israeli fighter jets have struck what they say are Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. Now, the Israeli military saying that these airstrikes are in response to a barrage of incendiary balloons that militants have been sending from Gaza into Israel. These are essentially helium-filled. They look like party decorations, but they're attached to either explosive or other devices that are lit on fire and sent over the border. Israeli officials say that over the past few years, these types of balloons have caused thousands of acres to burn in southern Israel. This is part of a new position on the Israeli side where they want to respond to everything. In the past, these balloons, it's hard to say they would be tolerated, but they wouldn't have necessarily received the same level of response as these amount of airstrikes we're seeing in the past few days. Overnight last night, the IDF says it struck a rocket launch site as well as military compounds. On Tuesday night, the Israeli military said it also struck military targets in Gaza, but so far, no casualties have been reported. And I think we need to keep in mind the sort of messaging that is being sent by both Hamas sending balloons, but not rockets, and the Israeli military striking targets in the Gaza Strip, but not necessarily high-level targets, and no casualties reported. The Israeli military chief of staff, who's actually supposed to fly to the United States for a week-long visit on Saturday night, said that he has held a situational assessment where he instructed the Israeli military to increase its readiness and preparedness for a possible resumption of hostilities. So far, Hamas not launching any rockets from Gaza into Israel, but it goes to show you how tense the situation is here, and any sort of move any which way could cause this situation to even further escalate. Laura?
All right, Hadas, we know you're staying on top of it. Thanks.
All right, tennis superstar Naomi Osaka with another big announcement where fans can see her on the court next.
Roll camera.
Stanley Tucci. I'm traveling across Italy to discover how the food is as unique as the people and their past.
Oh my God, so good.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source. When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line? You don't believe that there's a racial divide here. Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough? All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
I'm Scott McLean in Madrid, Spain, and this is CNN.
All right, Friday morning, 24 minutes past the hour, the Bucks bounce back to force a Game 7 in their series with the Nets. Coy Wire has more in this morning's Bleacher Report. Good morning, Coy.
Good morning, Christine. Good to see you. After blowing a 17-point lead in Game 5, the Bucks knew they had to be more aggressive at home in Game 6, or they were going to be knocked out of the playoffs early again this season. And aggressive they were. Giannis in attack mode. Didn't attempt a three-pointer all game for the first time all postseason. Good on 8 of his first 9 shots, but it was Chris Middleton putting in one of the best games of his career, leading the way from Milwaukee. 38 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals. My goodness. Brooklyn's Joe Harris said afterwards, this series has been like a dogfight. Well, it's the Bucks with the big bark and bite last night. The Greek Freak went for 30. Bucks win at 104-89, forcing the best 2 words in sports. Game 7 in Brooklyn tomorrow. The home teams won every game of this series. Tennis superstar Naomi Osaka has withdrawn from Wimbledon. Her agent confirming the 23-year-old wants to take some personal time with friends and family, but she will play next month's Olympics in her home country, Japan. Osaka withdrew, you may remember, from the French Open last month after being fined for refusing to speak to the media there, citing potential negativity that can arise during media sessions. Osaka says she's suffered long bouts of depression dating back to her first Grand Slam title win in 2018. An emotional scene in Copenhagen where Denmark and Belgium paying tribute to soccer star Christian Eriksen, who suffered cardiac arrest and nearly died on the field on Saturday in Euros action. Eriksen wearing the number 10, both teams stopping in the 10th minute to applaud him. The fans joining in. Eriksen has been recovering in the hospital just yards from the stadium. He'll be given a heart starter device to help prevent future attacks. Belgium beat Denmark 2-1. To golf now in the U.S. Open underway at Torrey Pines. Brooks Koepka had his putter working early. 4 birdies in his opening round. He finished at 2 under par. 2 shots behind co-leaders Russell Henley and Louis Oosthuizen. Koepka's had a well-publicized feud with Bryson DeChambeau in recent weeks. And check out Bryson trying to photobomb him in an interview, just like he did in the PGA Championship. Koepka was up on a riser, so maybe didn't quite have the same effect there. All right, finally, the Diamondbacks making history yesterday, and not the kind they want. Arizona losing its 23rd straight game away from the desert, getting routed by the Giants 10-3. That, Christine and Laura, is the longest road losing streak in modern baseball history, dating all the way back to the year 1900. It's their 14th straight loss overall, and the 37th loss in their last 42 games. Talking about being on the wrong side of history, Diamondbacks fans know that all too well.
All right.
So great.
Nice to see you, Coy. Thank you.
Boy. All right, this housing market is so hot. Christine Romans tells you it every day. Even a house from hell rakes in all cash above asking price, offers graffiti everywhere, a freezer in the basement, get this, full of meat with no electricity. It attracts a bidding war. That's next.
All new African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities. Transform lives. Air and space professionals teach a new generation how to soar.
I use the power of flight to ignite dreams, to celebrate passion, and empower the next generation of leaders.
African Voices Changemakers, only on CNN.
In the hub, where East meets West, CNN Arabic is perfectly placed to find the facts. This is where stories happen. Politics, business, culture, real life. As the pace of change moves faster, we ask the important question. What is the truth? This is CNNArabic.com.
This is the 100 Club, our look at companies that are 100 years old or older. Dannon yogurts are known the world over. The business was fermented in the Spanish city of Barcelona, where Dr. Isaac Carasso began producing yogurt to help combat indigestion among children. In 2017, the company launched a new slogan, One Planet, One Health, and has now committed to making all of its packaging reusable, recyclable, and compostable by 2025. To mark its centenary, Dannon has allowed access to almost 2,000 of its yogurt strains to help scientific research into food and health benefits.
I guess the essence of the story of Danone is entrepreneurship for health.
Solar storage is a very critical part of the future energy system because solar cells, they produce electricity that we need to use directly. The challenge is to capture the energy and store it for up to 18 years without any depletion of the material. So if you look at how nature does this, you have the plants that absorb sunlight and convert the sunlight into stored chemical energy. And that is the energy we have in fossil fuels and we have in woods and in plants. But instead of burning it, we can recover our molecules in a closed cycle without any emissions. The input is light, the output is heat on demand. So there's no exchange of materials from the outside world. So this is the beauty of the system.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go. This is living. Uncovering the city's DNA. Meeting people who will share its secrets. Unbelievable.
right, good Friday morning, everybody. This is Early Start. I'm Christine Romans.
I'm Laura Jarrett. It's about 31 minutes past the hour here in New York, and this morning there is harrowing new police body cam footage from the Capitol riot. It's the second time this week the Justice Department has released new video from the insurrection. This time, it's in the case of a retired New York City police officer, Thomas Webster. He's the man in the red coat you can see there in the melee. It's a little hard. He's pleaded not guilty to 7 federal charges. CNN's Daniela Diaz is live on Capitol Hill for us this morning. Daniela, Congressman Andrew Clyde says this was a normal tourist visit. We all know it wasn't, based on what we could see with our own eyes, including in this latest tape. So what are prosecutors saying?
Prosecutors are saying this is offering a new glimpse into what really happened on January 6th. You know, this is part of a case against